Chumlee's net worth is approximately $5 million.
That house is cursed, a firm assertion from neighbors living near Chumlee Spends' million-dollar mansion. At first, many thought it was just a joke among friends, but ever since he was sentenced to life imprisonment, the place has ceased to be merely an address. It has become a clear warning. The mansion was once a dream, a $1 million value, a private pool, a modern game room, and an expensive collection, a place where a television star once lived like a king. But now, the house is decaying, damp, partially sealed off, and shunned by those who once admired it. What truly happened after that door closed for the last time? Why does all information about this place seem to be deliberately hidden? The house cannot speak, but it holds every memory, and perhaps those memories do not wish to be unearthed. Today's video will reveal the truth concealed beneath the dust of time. 1. The journey from the fool to a cultural icon. Before the courtroom's verdicts and crumbling photos of an abandoned mansion flooded the media, Chumlee was merely a background name in someone else's story. Austin Lee Russell was born on September 8, 1982 in Henderson, Nevada, a sun-scorched desert town brimming with American dreams. His upbringing wasn't anything out of the ordinary, a chubby kid unremarkable in school who even paid classmates to do his homework. But what stood out in Chumlee's childhood wasn't his grades. It was the bond he formed with Corey Harrison, the son of Rick Harrison, who would one day own the most famous pawn shop in the country. Theirs was a pure, lasting friendship that began in elementary school and continued into adulthood when they stepped together into the grown-up world that gave birth to Pawn Stars. For many, life takes a dramatic turn after a major event or a brilliant idea. For Chumlee, it began quietly in a small store called the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. In 2003, at just 21 years old, Chumlee started working at that pawn shop, doing the most basic tasks, cleaning, organizing, greeting customers, and even hauling strange items from storage to the display counter. Nobody expected that this big guy who constantly forgot prices and blurted out awkward remarks would become the heart and soul of one of the most successful reality shows of all time. But that's exactly what happened. In July 2009, Pawn Stars premiered on the History Channel. There weren't high hopes at first, yet just a few episodes in the show became a hit. Viewers tuned in to watch Rick haggle to hear the old man give sharp opinions, but they stayed because of Chumlee. He didn't know much about history, often misjudged item values, and was teased as the lovable fool. But his genuine awkwardness turned out to be the perfect ingredient that made the show feel fun, relatable, and instantly likable. Audiences didn't just laugh at Chumlee, they connected with him. Not everyone is a seasoned appraiser, but everyone has felt out of place among people who seem to know more. In an era where reality TV is increasingly scripted and over-dramatized, Chumlee stood out as one of the rare examples of authenticity. The kind of realness that comes from someone unaware. They've become famous. The kind of humor that isn't forced but effortlessly shines every time he's on screen. Over hundreds of episodes, he became the comic relief the show needed amidst all the antique treasures, high-priced paintings, and intense negotiations. When Rick needed a final word, Chumlee would jump in with a clueless but charming comment. When a customer's tension filled the room, it was Chumlee who broke the ice with a quirky joke or an unexpected antic. From being an anonymous janitor, Chumlee suddenly skyrocketed into a phenomenon. On social media, he amassed millions of followers. In real life, fans lined up just for a chance to take a photo with him. His name started appearing everywhere, on t-shirts, toys, stickers, and even calendar covers. Over time, Chumlee became a recognizable brand. But what made his journey truly remarkable was this: he never planned it. He never tried to become famous. Chumlee never took any acting classes and was never formally trained in entertainment. He was simply Corey's close friend working at the pawn shop who happened to have a natural charm in front of the camera, a charm that lasted over a decade. However, that very simplicity and lack of calculation also made everything more fragile. When fame hit him too quickly, There was nothing for Chumlee to hold on to except his instincts. When money media attention contracts and swarms of fans came pouring in, Chumlee, someone who had never been taught how to manage fame, began to slip along a path he never truly wanted to walk in the first place. But at the time, no one could foresee what was coming. To the audience, he was just this sweet, lovable guy. A little clumsy, perhaps. But it was exactly that clumsiness that made him such an irreplaceable part of their hearts. And somewhere in the middle of the Las Vegas desert, a mansion was slowly taking shape, built with the warmth of those very smiles. A large, luxurious house deeply personalized, standing as a symbol of a life that had traveled far beyond its humble beginnings. But no one could have imagined that this very house would later become a silent testament to a downfall, a symbol that no longer echoed with laughter, but was instead covered in the dust of what once was. 2. The lavish home. Chumlee's peak of glory. If a television show has the power to turn an unknown individual into a pop culture icon, then the fame and fortune that come with it can quickly shape or derail that person's life. Chumlee's case is a clear example. Starting in 2010, when Pawn Stars rose to become one of the most popular reality shows in the US, drawing over 5 million viewers per episode, Chumlee, once the clumsy guy among friends, suddenly became known nationwide as the rich goofball. And like many overnight reality TV stars, the first thing he did was something nearly everyone in Las Vegas dreams of. He bought a house. But it wasn't just a place to live. It was a home, a sanctuary, a symbol of what he had achieved. The house is located less than a 10-minute drive from the gold and silver pawn shop in a gated community, with tall, sturdy walls and lush green trees that provide shade and a sense of retreat from Nevada's scorching desert heat. The original price of the house was estimated at over $1.1 million, but after numerous interior upgrades and custom decorations reflecting his personal style, the total investment in the property may have exceeded $2 million according to local appraisal data from 2015, spanning nearly 5,400 square feet. Chumlee's villa is unlike the other traditional homes in the neighborhood. It reflects the unique personality of a tech enthusiast, pop culture addict, arcade game fanatic, and sneakerhead, who treats sneakers like daily essentials. Inside the walls are painted in dark tones adorned with street art pieces and vintage movie posters. The living room stands out with an 85-inch curved screen TV and a modern surround sound system. But what truly sets the house apart are the little details. Each space reveals a bit of Chumlee's distinct tastes and interests. The game room is designed like a mini studio with dozens of classic pinball machines imported from Japan and Europe, which he once proudly showcased on his personal YouTube channel in 2014. One machine modeled after the Addams Family movie is worth over $18,000 apiece. He once called his priceless treasure. Nearby is his sneaker collection display, over 200 pairs of sneakers, neatly arranged in transparent boxes, ranging from original Air Jordans to limited edition Yeezys, all with tags and boxes intact, looking brand new. At the end of the hallway is a personal recording studio, where Chumlee once experimented with writing and recording a few rap tracks with friends never released publicly, but enough to show that he wanted to fully enjoy life's pleasures even without a clear plan. The dining area is styled in a retro 80s theme, with red neon lights, black leather chairs, and a vintage fridge he once enthusiastically introduced as my favorite item in the house. The kitchen was designed to cook meals favored by his ex-fiancée Tanya Hijazi, a chef in Las Vegas, and it was here that Chumlee began learning how to cook after they got engaged. But perhaps the most remarkable feature is the backyard pool area. The teardrop-shaped pool is surrounded by hanging string lights, lounging chairs, Bluetooth speakers, and an outdoor BBQ space where many evening gatherings with friends, family, and fans have taken place. Videos posted on Chumlee's Instagram from 2014 to 2015 captured this everyday paradise: golden sunlight, vibrant music, hearty laughter, the familiar sound of pinball machines, and the chubby, cheerful figure of Chumlee gliding through the frame with a soda in hand. On social media, Chumlee's house has been checked into and photographed even more frequently than some of the trendiest downtown bars. He has thrown lively Halloween parties with hundreds of guests, celebrated his birthday with fireworks and a DJ to amp up the crowd, and even hosted a charitable event for underprivileged children right in his backyard. To many fans, that place isn't just a house. It's a symbol of the American dream. An ordinary guy without a prestigious education or elite background who, thanks to his unique personality and a bit of luck, managed to build an entire universe of his own. Still, perhaps the most remarkable thing about the house is what it was built on emotion. It's not merely a place to live, but a retreat from the hectic days of filming. A space where Chumlee can simply be himself. He doesn't need to be funny, clever, or rational there. It's the only place where he has complete control over the nightlight in his room, the food in the fridge, the playlist echoing through the speakers, and even the scent of essential oils in the bathroom. But like so many stories that come with fame, this house also marks the beginning of a period of excess. As his income surged, Chumlee's spending started to spiral. Friends came and went constantly. Expensive items began to appear everywhere, with no sense of order. A Rolls-Royce Phantom sat untouched in the driveway for weeks. A full arcade machine collection gathered dust because there simply wasn't time to enjoy them. Dozens of pricey sneakers remained untouched, tags still hanging. Signs of overload became impossible to ignore, not just in the house, but in its owner's mental state as well. And within those very walls that once echoed with laughter and joy, secrets began to settle. Locked rooms, sensitive belongings, and late-night meetings that neighbors knew better than to question. On the outside, everything still sparkled, but inside something was quietly unraveling, and no one was quick enough to stop it. For many people, success is a slow climb where every step is mapped out with discipline and strategy. But for Chumlee, fame arrived like a whirlwind, intense, overwhelming, and without room to catch his breath. When Pawn Stars exploded into a global phenomenon, when his name was printed on millions of souvenirs, and when people lined up just to get an autograph or a selfie, that was also the moment his personal life began to change dramatically. Chumlee was no longer just a pawn shop employee. He became a brand. In 2013, he officially launched his own merchandise line: t-shirts, snapback hats, toys, and other products featuring his signature chubby-cheeked face and goofy smile. First-year sales exceeded $500,000, a significant number for a supporting character on a reality TV show. But he didn't stop there. He expanded his business ventures. In May 2017, Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard officially opened its doors right across from the gold and silver pawn shop. Within just a few weeks, it ranked as the third most popular check-in spot on Yelp in Las Vegas, even beating out many famous restaurants. Fame struck like lightning, spreading as swiftly as a wildfire fanned by the wind. On the surface, everything seemed picture perfect. Chumlee was constantly invited for exclusive interviews, made appearances on late-night talk shows, and was even approached about starring in his own reality TV series. To the millions of fans watching, he wasn't just the guy who brought laughs. He was a living testament that honesty and sincerity could still shine through in a world of glitz and superficiality. People adored him because he stayed true to who he was. But the spotlight doesn't always come with just the glow of success. It brings pressure, scrutiny, and the inevitable traps that almost every celebrity eventually faces, one of the most dangerous being the illusion of invincibility. Once you become accustomed to admiration, praise, and recognition, it becomes incredibly hard to accept that all of it could fade, or to confront the unsettling thought that maybe, just maybe, you don't truly deserve it. Chumlee's life began to pick up speed. As his wealth grew, so did his spending. The photos he shared on Instagram also took a noticeable turn. Once lighthearted and relatable, they evolved into snapshots of luxury floors covered with high-end sneakers, a gleaming Rolex on his wrist, sports cars lined up in the driveway. At one point, his car collection reached 12 vehicles, including a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Maserati Gran Turismo, a 1986 Buick, Regal modified with a hydraulic system, and several classic vintage models. Each new indulgence felt like unlocking the next level of a game. Once he'd conquered the sneaker world, he moved on to collecting watches. Then, from watches, his interest shifted to guns. Antique firearms, many of them purchased from customers who visited the shop, began appearing throughout his home as status symbols. In a behind-the-scenes video, Chumlee once said he wanted to own things other people wouldn't even dare to dream about. And his house, like a mirror of his evolving lifestyle, transformed along with him. What was once simply a place to unwind became a bold expression of a growingly complex persona that was drifting further from reality. The entertainment spaces were expanded. Part of the backyard was converted into an outdoor party area. Massive JBL speakers were installed to fuel EDM nights that stretched into the early morning. Every inch of the house was optimized for a non-stop lifestyle, but it was also a life with no clear escape. More and more friends started showing up. The parties lasted longer than before. Inside the house, unfamiliar objects began to appear strange. Kitchen tools, odd-looking straws, and scents that didn't belong. Although Chumlee never publicly spoke about what really happened during that period, those close to him admitted. Everything came too fast, and he didn't have time to stop and take a look at himself. Then the warning signs gradually began to surface. In 2014, a few video clips of Chumlee arguing with fans started to go viral. By 2015, he had been fined by the police for speeding in a residential area. Incidents that once might have been overlooked were now picked apart by the media because for a celebrity, even the smallest mistake can become clickbait. What concerned people more, though, was the change in his appearance. From a cheerful, friendly, slightly chubby guy, Chumlee began to look worn out, often short of breath, and was frequently seen wearing sunglasses even indoors. Inside the mansion, many areas were off-limits. Some rooms remained locked at all times, rumored to be where Chumlee kept personal items that no one else was allowed to touch. Close friends like Rick Harrison gradually stopped coming by. Corey kept a noticeable distance. A few former employees from the shop said Chumlee had repeatedly shown up late, missed filming sessions, and at times disappeared without explanation. To viewers, Chumlee still appeared as the same funny, easygoing character on TV. But behind the camera, he had become someone entirely different. Quiet, withdrawn, and occasionally out of control. Sudden outbursts, careless words, and that distant look in his eyes during interviews left many feeling that something was off. That was also when Chumlee's dazzling dreams began to morph into something else. What once inspired him became a burden. His ambitions turned into obsessions. The peak of success crumbled into a bottomless pit. And the mansion, once a bright, proud symbol of personal achievement, had started to change. It was no longer a home to return to at the end of the day, but a place to hide from reality. A corner of the sneaker display room had become a dumping ground for unopened shoeboxes. The backyard pool sat untouched for weeks, collecting grime. The once buzzing game room had gone silent. No sound of the familiar pinball machine. Neon lights still glowed through the night, but no one was there waiting for their warmth. The mansion remained massive, modern and fully equipped, but it lacked the breath of life. Because no one can live inside a dream forever once they've lost who they are. And then, like an unspoken rule that comes with fame when everything hits too fast, too intensely, the price you pay usually arrives just as suddenly, and it's never cheap. 3. The terrifying raid, when a home becomes a crime scene. In the mid-afternoon, as Las Vegas gradually transitioned from its final rays of sunlight to the hues of dusk, a convoy of unmarked vehicles belonging to a special task force from law enforcement quietly made its way toward the residence where Chumlee lived. The automatic gate opened as it usually did, drawing no suspicion or attention. But this time, it wasn't friends coming over for a party, nor fans dropping by for autographs. It was the police armed with an official search warrant. No one, not even the neighbors long accustomed to the constant commotion from that mansion, could have anticipated what was about to unfold. The front door was forced open. A firm voice called out the search warrant. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallways. One room after another was opened in rapid succession, as if every layer of glitz was being peeled back to reveal what had been hidden within. Police discovered not just one, but more than 10 firearms scattered throughout the house, in the bedroom, inside a safe, and even in the most unexpected places among personal belongings, watches, phones, and gaming consoles. What was even more concerning was that many of these weapons were unregistered. Some of them fell under restricted categories, typically reserved for military personnel or special units. In addition to the weapons, authorities also found marijuana and methamphetamine stored in sealed containers, some of which remained fully unopened. Notably, the storage room appeared to have been cleverly arranged to conceal its contents. The entrance was discreetly hidden behind a shoe cabinet and equipped with a separate electronic lock. What was discovered had crossed the line of personal privacy. It had become criminal evidence. That evening, Chumlee was arrested. Wearing a gray hoodie, his face didn't show much emotion, only weary, bloodshot eyes, likely from sleepless nights or prolonged anxiety. The news spread like wildfire. From TMZ to NBC, headlines blared in unison. Pawn stars, celebrity arrested with cache of weapons and drugs at home. Social media was in shock. Fans were bewildered. Those who once saw him as a symbol of humor and lighthearted fun now had to face a harsh reality. The man they adored was now facing the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence. Just a few weeks later, the first court hearing officially took place. The atmosphere was tense. The media was out in full force. Dozens of cameras and journalist lenses were trained on the man who had once made audiences laugh with his goofy antics. But now he sat silently facing a slew of serious charges: illegal possession of firearms, drug possession, and suspicions of involvement in an ongoing investigation. The prosecution seized every opportunity. They presented photos of the scene, firearms nestled among clothes packets of narcotics next to a game console, and security footage showing strangers appearing at night. They sought to paint a very different picture of Chumlee, no longer the humorous, bumbling guy, but a troubled individual posing a potential threat to the community. The defense team didn't stand idly by. They emphasized that their client was a known collector, from sneakers to vintage toys, so his collection of guns was simply another personal hobby. They argued that he was under intense psychological stress from rising to fame too quickly, that he had no prior criminal record, had always cooperated with authorities, and had never harmed anyone. However, when the subject of drugs came up, their defense began to falter. No one could deny that the items found in Chumlee's house were hard to reconcile with the image of a completely harmless person. It was in this trial that the details about the house were first made public. People were astonished by the striking contrast: a place that once symbolized success, with its swimming pool, designer shoes, and vintage gaming consoles, now a place where dark secrets were hidden. Each room had now become a symbol of contradiction. The recording studio, now a place filled with suspicious items. The game room, showing clear signs of being soundproofed. The mansion, once flooded with light, was now referred to as a cold storage of decadence. Then came the sentencing day. The courtroom was packed. No seat was left vacant. Everyone eagerly awaited the outcome of this story. And when Judge Michael Davidson began to read the verdict, the courtroom fell into a tense silence. Every word, every sentence seemed to hang in the air, thick with gravity. 3 years of probation, community service, regular drug testing, confiscation of related assets, and the final warning. Any act of reoffending during this time would result in an automatic prison sentence. Chumlee stood up, his face tense, his hands clenched, but before he could react, his body began to tremble. His breath became rapid, his eyes bulged. Sweat poured down his face. A soft groan escaped him, and then he collapsed right in front of everyone. The entire room was in shock. Medical staff rushed in. Fans outside the building couldn't believe their eyes as the footage was broadcast live. Chumlee, who had once brought laughter to the audience, now lay motionless on the cold wooden floor of the courtroom, serving as a harsh reminder that sometimes glory can destroy a person if they are not strong enough to stand in its light. At that moment, the house had been sealed. All the assets inside were carefully listed. Some were sent for examination, while others were stored. The legal paperwork began turning the mansion into a part of a criminal record, no longer a home, but a crime scene. The walls that once echoed with laughter now held nothing but a suffocating silence. The dark corners that had once hidden from the prying eyes of the media were now exposed under the harsh light of legal scrutiny. This was the beginning of the end, not only for Chumlee's public image, but also for the house that had once been seen as an extension of his soul. A house, a fortress, a museum of personality, now transformed into a land of chaos, a symbol of consequences and the clearest physical evidence that fate can ever create. 4. The abandoned house. A legacy lost after the sentence. As the media gradually withdrew as the public's attention shifted to the next scandal, and as Chumlee officially entered a period of probation with a criminal record closely monitored, his house began to fall into silence. The police were no longer present. There were no cameras, no sounds of people. All that remained was a large concrete structure sitting in a secluded residential area of Las Vegas, once a hub of activity now transformed into a ghost quiet and cold. The mansion stood motionless, like an unwilling witness. No one entered. No one left. The automatic gate had been disabled. The electricity was reduced to a minimum. At night, the atmosphere became even darker than during the day. The neon lights that once brightly lit up the pool were now off, and the shadows in the garden swallowed every bit of light from the street lamps. A few neighbors, in their rare responses to local press interviews, described the house as a dark shadow in the middle of the bright neighborhood. They recalled the lively afternoons with music echoing from the backyard, occasionally even hearing laughter from the pool. Now, all of that was gone, replaced by overgrown weeds higher than the knees, dry leaves filling the walkways and dust covering the windows that had once been meticulously cleaned. After the investigation, the police transferred some of the seized property to the evidence storage, including weapons, electronic devices, and items related to criminal charges. However, many personal belongings, decorations, memorabilia, antique toys, and expensive technology were left behind, with no clear owner, and no one came to claim them. Many of these items were valued under $5,000, so they did not qualify for public auction under Nevada law. They remained still in a state of waiting, as though waiting for an owner who would never return. Inside, the furnishings were still the same as when Chumlee left. The collection of sneakers, once neatly displayed, was now reduced to empty, lonely shelves. Some shoes were believed to have been taken during the initial cleaning, while others were seized by authorities. On the walls, the imprints of frames that had once hung were still clearly visible, but the paintings were gone, leaving only faded gaps on the dark-colored walls. The large mirror in the master bedroom had a long crack. No one knew when it had happened. The pool, once the center of parties, was now filled with rainwater and algae. Some leftover items, like a deflated float rusted cans and a tipped-over lounge chair, all created a sense of a space overtaken by time. The musty smell began to spread from the ground floor to the second. The air conditioner no longer worked. The water filtration system had stopped long ago. The back glass door, once the exit to the pool, now had a crack running along its aluminum frame like a fracture that could never be repaired between the past and the present. The real estate company that was tasked with handling the property's files decided not to continue representing it, citing the reason that the market value is not attractive enough to justify reinvestment. A few individual investors expressed interest in buying it, but after witnessing the actual condition of the house, they quickly withdrew. An abandoned house in the middle of Las Vegas is not a rare sight, but when it once belonged to a famous person and is tied to a criminal scandal, the value of the property extends beyond just its physical worth, carrying with it too many layers of meaning. By the end of 2023, the house's market value had dropped by more than 35% from its peak, falling from over $1.5 million to approximately $950,000 according to unofficial estimates. However, even at that reduced price, it still couldn't find a buyer. Some people refer to it as the cursed house. Others are more blunt, calling it the remains of a shattered reputation. No one wants to move into a space that was once the site of a raid involving weapons and drugs, even though the walls have been repainted and the legal issues have been settled. The house, once the most valuable asset Chumlee owned, has now become something no one dares to touch. A symbol now cracked. A legacy that even its owner wishes to forget. From the outside, peeking through the tall iron fence, one can still see the string lights around the backyard, though many of the bulbs are broken. Those lights were once the glow of parties, but now they're just cold shards of glass, no longer serving any purpose to shine. Then, amid all this silence, something strange happened. The house gradually faded from the public eye. No more updated articles, no more YouTube videos reporting on it. Only a few clips from YouTubers exploring abandoned houses, sneakily filming and attracting millions of views, like a fleeting glimpse into a past that once shined. The drone footage captures the faded roof, the cracked walls, the backyard littered with trash, all of it sending a chill down the viewer's spine. This was once the home of a TV millionaire. Chumlee never returned. He never mentioned the house in any statement after that. It seems the house has been erased from his official biography, locked away both in reality and memory, but it still stands, like a long crack in the story of a person who once represented innocence and harmlessness. Now that crack has turned into a wound, and the house is a scar that cannot be removed. Abandonment is not just the absence of a resident, it's also a refusal to look back. It's the clearest proof that some things, once they've fallen apart, cannot be repaired with a new coat of paint or new furniture, and in this case, it's not just the house. It's an entire era of glory that's gone. 5. The house in the public's mind. Although the door has been locked, dust covers the path and the lights have long since gone out in the dark of night, in the minds of the millions of viewers who grew up with Pawn Stars. Chumlee's house still remains vibrant, not in the present, but in memory. It's not just a place on the map of Las Vegas. That house has become a symbol. It is an inseparable part of the story people once believed in, that an ordinary person could rise to fame, live a dream life, and still maintain innocence under the spotlight. On Reddit forums and Facebook groups, for Pawn Stars fans, or in YouTube, where are they? Now compilation videos that house is frequently mentioned as a legendary place. A location where upon entering you feel as though you've stepped back into a TV show, a cultural era, and the image of a character who once made viewers laugh uncontrollably. Fans once shared that they dreamed of taking a photo next to the wall where Chumlee displayed his rare Pokémon card collection, or of standing in the corner of the yard where the Addams Family pinball machine once rang out like a victory bell. But that dream has never come true, and it may never. When the first videos from daring YouTubers began circulating, showing the inside of the now abandoned house, a truth no one wanted to face became painfully clear. Those beautiful memories are no longer there. Everything has changed. What was once a launch pad for fame now stands barren and distorted. What was once a part of shared memory has now become a target for clicks, satisfying curiosity. Videos showing grass growing over the steps, the front door pried open, the inside in chaos with broken bottles, decaying papers, and even signs of vandalism, have attracted millions of views. Clips with hashtags like #ChumleeHouse or #PawnStars abandoned have become popular content on TikTok and YouTube. Shorts. But that attention is no longer out of love. It's the satisfaction of a world eager to dig through ruins where the downfall of a celebrity becomes an entertainment snack for the masses. It's hard to say whether that feeling is sadness or anger. The public has the right to be interested, the right to be disappointed. But one thing is certain, the house is no longer just Chumlee's. It has become a part of popular culture, a symbol of both glory and consequences. A house quite literally taken from the hands of its owner by the very attention that once elevated him to the top. The media, in post-scandal analyses, began referring to the house as the mansion of the fall. Articles have highlighted its symbolic angle, once a paradise for an innocent man. In the entertainment world, it has now become a cautionary tale about the darker side of fame. Some cultural writers have even called it the Graceland of the reality TV generation, not because of its greatness, but because of its level of public recognition. Yet instead of being preserved, this house has been forgotten. In the minds of fans, the image of the house has gradually split into two completely different memories. One side is filled with happy moments, laughter, outdoor barbecues, and Chumlee's live streams with a constant smile on his face. The other side is a dark scene with discarded, chaotic items, torn curtains, and the sound of wind howling through broken glass windows. It's the same place, but two opposing stories, much like the journey that Chumlee has gone through. Amidst the silent regrets, people began to reminisce about old stories. Some recall seeing Chumlee giving candy to children at his candy store. Others share photos and remember how he was always smiling and greeting everyone first, even though no one recognized him. Those simple memories, though somewhat out of place, still shine, like the shards of glass left behind in a house that has collapsed. Now, in the public's eye, that house seems like an unfinished dream. It once symbolized goodness and approachability in a glamorous world, but now it stands as a monument to lost innocence. Yet because of this, it has not been forgotten. Even in its ruin, the house still evokes something in everyone. A youth that has passed a dream once held in our hands, a naive belief that everything would remain just as it was. Chumlee may no longer live there. He may never return. But the house still remains, like an old photograph hanging crookedly on the wall of the public's memory, and in the hearts of those who once loved him. That house is not just an address. It carries a message that glory is real but fragile, that we once witnessed a boy walk through that door like a character in a fairy tale, and leave as a man bearing all the consequences of a dream that went too far. 6. What happened to Chumlee's assets? In the dim light of the years following the scandal amidst the collapse of his reputation and public image, a more practical yet equally haunting question continued to linger. Where did Chumlee's fortune go? At the height of his career, Chumlee's net worth was estimated to be around $5 million USD. An impressive figure for a reality TV personality who was neither a lead actor nor a producer. This wealth came from his earnings on Pawn Stars revenue from his personal brand merchandise profits from his candy shop, Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard, as well as his collection of cars, sneakers, rare Pokemon cards, and collectibles from the transactions featured on the show. It was the result of over a decade of hard work, but also a direct consequence of the whirlwind of fame he had been caught up in. When the investigation took place in 2016, most of Chumlee's collectible items and valuable possessions in his home were placed on a temporary confiscation list for legal proceedings. According to the legal process in Nevada, any items related to the case, including assets with no proven legal origin or unregistered items, were to be seized or liquidated. A large portion of Chumlee's gun collection, with an estimated value of over 100,000 USD, was sealed and then permanently confiscated. For items not directly related to the charges, such as sneakers, trading cards, and arcade game equipment, the handling became more complicated. Some were returned after the parties reached an agreement in the probation records, but most were auctioned internally to cover legal fees, incurred debts, and settle undisclosed hush money. Although no official list was ever released, items that once belonged to Chumlee began to quietly surface on underground auction sites, with descriptions stating formerly the property of Pawn Stars star. The house, once considered the most valuable asset, has now become a complex issue. Due to legal procedures, the transfer of the house requires court approval. Additionally, the maintenance costs, property taxes, and unresolved debts from previous mortgages have made it impossible to sell the house quickly. After some time, documents showed that the ownership of the house was temporarily transferred to an intermediary, a company specializing in handling legal assets, a company that helps clean up records before returning the property to the market. However, the house still failed to find a buyer, and its condition continued to deteriorate day by day. Legally, Chumlee still maintained control over most of his assets not related to the case, such as his candy store personal brand and other side investments. However, the financial consequences were unavoidable. Industry sources have reported that he had to sell many assets to cover legal fees, fines, and living expenses during a time of no income. While the candy store remained in operation, its scale had shrunk, and it was no longer being heavily promoted as it once was. A celebrity's wealth is not only based on material assets, but also on the value of their brand. In Chumlee's case, his brand nearly collapsed entirely severely, reducing the value of his assets. Advertising contracts vanished. Television show invitations were canceled. Merchandise with his personal brand was discontinued. By 2020, Chumlee's net worth was estimated to be only around $400,000 to $600,000, less than 15% of its peak value. Part of this came from retaining the rights to his candy store, while the rest consisted of his remaining personal assets, mostly electronics, a few cars, and savings accounts. The most bitter part was that the wealth once a symbol of his success had now become just a trace. What he once owned was now mostly in the hands of others. Although he no longer had the luxurious mansion nor the expensive collection, the most noticeable losses were his trust, his image, and his position in the public's hearts, which he had once held as the lovable fool on Pawn Stars. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to follow the next chapter in this journey of uncovering the truth.